What's going on, guys? So I have my new friend here, Scott Molchan, and basically the way me and Scott met was he has a podcast as well called the $1 Million Landscaper Podcast, and I actually had reached out to him, and we chatted, and I have an episode on his podcast, and I wanted to bring him on because what I learned is that Scott specializes in a pain point that many of you have talked to me about before, and Scott's basically been in the landscaping business for gosh 20 plus years, been in that industry. He coaches a lot of people, but he specializes in like understanding your numbers and pricing out your services. And so this is going to be relevant for any type of business you own in the home service business space. Scott specifically kind of specializes in the landscape space, but he is absolutely obsessed with understanding numbers and pricing services. And I think this is super valuable because just like me and him were talking prior, it doesn't matter what you do in revenue, it matters what you take home. And so, Scott, welcome to the podcast. I'm super pumped to have you on and excited to talk today.
Hey, Matt. No, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And yeah, absolutely. Revenues is just kind of a vanity metric in my opinion. I agree with that.
Yeah. So let's dive back a little bit, just to kind of give the listeners a little bit of I guess a showcase of what your life looked like. You know, I know you had built a landscape business, a 7-figure landscape business with your dad, and kind of like me, you have a passion for helping people in the home service business space. So tell us your story a little bit, kind of where you started and what you're doing now.
Sure. Sure. So yeah, my dad started the landscape business in 1988. He was actually working for another business before that, but he decided to go on his own. And that's kind of when we became incorporated and kind of legit, I guess. And kind of just grew up in doing the landscaping business. When he started, I think I was a freshman in high school. So I kind of out there, out in the field every day, kind of working along the way and just progressed my way up, started learning sales and started, eventually became the vice president. And kind of along the way, I met my wife at the time and, we're trying to look at bringing her on. And we started really looking at the numbers like, holy cow, we're not making enough money. Like it's just, I didn't really look at the books before. I kind of left it to my mom and my dad who ran the
Yeah.
business. And once we started looking, I was like, holy cow, this is not right. So my wife and I actually kind of took this on ourselves and we started really looking at the numbers and we actually decided to, after talking to my mom and dad, like let's bring on a consultant because we're not nailing it. We're doing good in revenue. I think at that time, I think we had like 15 employees, we're over $1 million a year, but we just didn't have the money. Like
Yeah.
there was no money in the bank, struggling to make payroll. My wife, like she tells a story all the time, like she was questioning if she had enough money in our bank account just to go make, buy groceries for the,
Yeah.
everything. So we kind of grew up having those struggles. And it wasn't until we started really looking at our business and really taking a deep dive into our numbers and realizing we weren't charging enough. We were working with other consultants and stuff, like I said, and they kept saying, "I'll just do more sales, more sales, more sales." Well, that's great. We went to sales and, learned some stuff from different programs but it didn't matter if we weren't charging enough. It didn't matter at the end of the day because we didn't have the money there.
Yeah.
So we kind of started taking a different approach. Like we have to learn the numbers. We really dived down and started looking into like what our equipment's costing, what our labors are really costing us, what's our overhead. And once we started really understanding that, then we can start diving in, putting it into a estimating system that we can charge our clients enough. And that's what we essentially teach today. So, kind of into the story, we ended up starting helping other landscapers in our area because we see a ton of landscapers come and go. They start a business, they last a couple of years and they're out. Why is that? Again, it's because they didn't understand the numbers. Nobody ever goes out of business because they don't have enough work. It's usually
Yeah.
go out of business because they don't have enough money in their bank or they're tired of the struggling and they're going to go do something else. So we started helping some of the landscapers like, oh, this is pretty cool. I felt just warm and fuzzy inside, I guess,
Yep.
after helping other landscapers and let's do this. So we started having a program. We started having online courses and started helping other landscapers around the country. And it's that's what we were focused on today is really helping landscapers. And this, like you said, this can go to any service industry. It doesn't matter. It's all the same business to business as far as that point,
Yep.
as far as numbers. Yeah, that's what we really dive into is really understanding your numbers. From there, then you can start doing the sales and making the money that you need to be making. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm kind of numbers geek, Excel geek. I love those types of things.
That's funny. I'm surprised you're not like an engineer or something.
Yeah.
What do you see as far as like, I can relate with this, by the way. it's there has been seasons in my home service business where we had a lot of revenue coming in, but we didn't even really know why we charged what we charged. We just did it because like it's kind of what we had always done.
Hmm.
And then like you look at your bank account and you're like, gosh, dude, like this is way too much work to not be making any money. And so like the freedom that you feel once you actually understand your numbers, it's a weird thing, but it's real. So what do you see with landscapers or business owners in general? Like where does somebody even start with that? If they're, I don't know, they're doing 100 or 500,000 a year and they're like, I don't understand my pricing. I don't even know why I price what I price. Like what's the first thing they should be doing?
So one of the first things they need to do is really start looking at what are your true costs of your business. What are you paying your people? What are you paying for even just something as simple as like safety glasses or
Hmm.
gloves or boots? You give that stuff. That's all a cost for your business. If you're not passing it on to the customer in the end, it's coming out of your profits. So it's really taking a step back and looking at all your costs, and I'm talking anything for running your business, whether it's a stapler or some paper or anything, that's all costs. So you really need to sit down and take a deep dive and spend. You can literally do this in 2 days. We've taught people how to do this in 2 days, but you
Yeah.
can spend a weekend sitting down, looking at all your costs and figuring out what's overhead, what is going on behind your business, for your CPAs, your attorneys, or, marketing, whatever you have, that what your equipment's costing you. We see so many landscapers that don't charge for their equipment. The equipment's a huge thing and it's very expensive. It costs to maintain it, new
Hmm.
tires, oils, and all that stuff. So those are all the costs you need to start really looking at. And once you really start understanding it and you start adding up like what you're spending every month, it's huge, huge eye opener. Like to many people, they start seeing like, holy cow, I didn't realize this stuff costs as much. You're just busy working, and I'll do more. I'll get more on the next job. I'll do more on the next job. But it's one of the first things you need to do is just step back, look at all your true costs, lay them all out in even, I don't care if you get an Excel spreadsheet or a piece of paper, just write them down and start looking at what you need to be charging just to cover your basic cost.
Yeah, because
Don't,
you were saying, and I don't know if this was you guys or a client, but you were saying like even like a weed whip that people don't even think about whether it's maintenance or gas or the cost of the actual weed whip itself, like can be like 2,000 or $3,000 a year in expense.
yeah, yeah. That's in our program, we have a calculator to help you figure out all these costs. And when you start adding up just what your equipment, and like you said, it's a huge eye opener. They see a weed whip cost 2 to 3 thousand. There's like no way, the weed whips, 4, 5, $800, whatever they get. Yeah, but there's also the gas that goes into it, and we figure out like we have formulas to tell you how much you're using on average,
Yep.
an hour to run that. Then you got the heads to it, the string that goes into it. It adds up very quickly,
Hmm.
and it's a huge number when you start looking at all your trucks and equipment and everything that goes in. I've seen landscapers have $100,000 to $200,000 a year just operating to pay for that equipment. The other thing we add in there too is at some point you have to replace that piece of equipment. So we need to start looking at inflation because it's going to be cost more. Obviously, inflation is crazy right now.
Yeah.
We need to make sure we're adding that in there. So that's one of the calculations. But yeah, it is a huge, huge eye opener when people start seeing what equipment's really costing them.
That's crazy. Yeah, yeah. So, all right. So let's just even say they have QuickBooks or maybe they don't, but they are able to break down what their expenses are on a monthly basis. So from that point, what does somebody do with that? Like, how do they take that number of their overhead, their marketing costs, their operations cost, and how do they then figure out what do I do in order to figure out how to price my services?
So, like a really basic down to earth way to kind of do that is once you have like especially your overhead cost, we need to figure out what your overhead cost per hour is. And just kind of a quick easy way to do that is really looking at how much time your employees are spending out there and looking at it all, for the full season, whatever your season is. We need to figure out how many hours your employees are actually working. And when I'm talking employees, I'm talking the people that are actually out in the field that are producing
Hmm.
work to generate revenue, not necessarily your salesperson or yourself if you're not in the field, but whoever's out in the field. So we figure out how many hours are, and we divide that by the cost of your overhead. And that's going to tell you how much your overhead is per hour. And that's going to be just a very basic way to do it, a very simple way to do it. But from there, whatever your price is for your job, you need to add that overhead cost per hour on there.
Yep.
And that's going to at least cover your cost. And then from there, you can either add your profit. Now, having said that, that is just a very basic way, like I said, just kind of doing that quick math. And that's better than nothing. However, though, like in the landscape industry specifically, there's all these different types of work that you do. So if you have a heavy equipment job that's mainly just an operator and a piece of equipment going out there and grading a lawn or whatever,
Yep.
you know, if you don't charge appropriately for the overhead, you're not making enough money. Now, with different estimating systems that are out there, you can charge based on whether it's a heavy equipment job, heavy labor job, and it's going to adjust that overhead to where you need to be to charge exactly what you need to cover all that. Because the other thing too is if you start doing the math, like I said, the quick way is you're charging all your clients exactly for all your overhead. And the problem kind of comes into is if you're charging all your clients, so say you're doing lawn care, say you have lawn care and landscaping side, well, you're essentially charging all your overhead for, even if it's for landscaping side, your maintenance side, you're charging.
Mm.
So having a different estimating system that kind of tailors it, we call it a multiple overhead recovery system. You can tailor it towards your business, and it's going to be a more price accurate number. And it's going to allow you to be more competitive with your competition. So there's a lot to it. I know I went through a lot there, but the
Yeah.
simplest way: add your overhead, figure out your numbers for your time, divide it out. That's what your overhead costs per hour. That's a very down to earth, quick and simple way to get
Because
going.
because most guys are getting a call for, let's just say, lawn care. They go out or don't even go out. It's a neighborhood lot, and they're like, $40, but they don't actually know why they just charge that customer $40.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is I always recommend everything is time based. This is what you're selling. You are selling your time. You're selling your crew's time out there, time for your equipment, time to install that plan.
Hmm.
So you need to start changing your mindset into looking at time. Now, once you start learning all that stuff, you can actually go into flat rate pricing where you can go out there and say, yes, this is $40 or $50, but you have to understand the basis behind it. Otherwise, you're just guessing and crossing your fingers and hoping you're going to make money on it. So yeah, everything is time. So you really need to start looking when you go out to look at that job, how much time is it going to take?
Yeah.
And then that's where you're going to add that overhead cost per hour in there, what your basic cost for everything. And that then you can actually give an accurate cost.
No, that's interesting. Yeah. So like for our house washing service and my home service business, like let's just say it's a 2,500 square foot house and we're going to charge $500 to wash it. Like that's fine for like a cookie cutter house with 4 sides. But if it's a 2,500 square foot house with 3 add-ons and there's 8 sides to the house, which every side takes longer, it's like, well, a job that would have normally taken, let's just say, an hour and a half, 2 hours, now it's going to take us 4, but we charge them the same amount that we would charge the cookie cutter home. Like those are the kind of things. So yeah, you're right. The time focused rather than just, lot size or, I
Yeah.
don't know, is there a million trees in the yard? So you're going to have to weed whip a lot more or whatever the
Yeah.
case is.
Yeah. The other thing, like I tell landscapers, they never really think about it. They'll like say you're going to put 5 trees in a property. They'll figure out, 5 trees and they'll say it's $50 an hour or
Yep.
$50 for each tree, whatever it is, just simple math here. Well, what if the one front tree is right in the front? You're going to load it from your truck trailer, drop it right in the hole. Well, the next one, you got to take the gate down, go through the fence, up a hill. It's
Mm-hmm.
take twice as long, and you're still charging the same price. Well, you're
Yeah.
losing. So, with an estimating system that allows you to price it exactly based on the time per each plant, it gives you an opportunity to actually make more money. And the other thing too, once you have a system that allows you to based on time, you can tell your crew members, hey, we have 40 man hours based for this job.
Yeah.
And they know exactly, okay, time is relevant to them. If you go tell your customers like, hey, we're charging $500 for this or whatever it is, your employees have no idea what $500 means. They don't know what you're
Yeah.
paying your employees. They don't understand the cost for your business. So when you start breaking down to a system that allows you to charge based on time, you can tell your teams. The other backside of that too is you can start having bonuses based on that, because
Mm.
if your crew members are coming in under your estimating time, now you have a way to get, or allow your employees to make more money because they're getting the jobs done as long as there's no issues.
Yep.
So
Yep.
there's a lot to it. And when you start putting in this whole system together.
That's really good. One of our coaching clients in the boot camp, he owns a painting business. And so, their jobs, they're there for, it can be anywhere from 1 day to 2 weeks, depending on the size of the job. And that was one thing he was struggling with, was getting his employees to complete the jobs on time. And so what we helped him lay out was he made a clear time frame of how long the job should take, implemented a bonus program where if the job got completed within those hours, they would get a certain percentage bonus on that. And wouldn't you know it, first job he implements it on, they finish the job right on time. And so, yeah, there's tons of upside to that, just even from a bonus perspective or an employee perspective.
Yeah, and I've actually heard of companies that start doing that type of thing. They start creating competitions amongst crews. So if you have multiple
Oh,
crews doing the same thing, they start saying, "Oh, I can get this, I can make more money, or I can get it done faster." And it's kind of cool to see how much more efficient they get because they're trying to have a competition among themselves. So it's a kind of interesting thing when you start putting it all together.
yeah, no, that's good. So, do you see, are people typically charging too little? And if so, when they raise their prices, are they losing more jobs? Is it hurt? Is it, because I think that's like the fear a lot of people have. They're like, well, if I raise my prices, like I'm not going to close any of these deals.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we hear this all the time. Yeah, I can't charge that. I can't charge that. And I start kind of peeling back the layers here and figuring out why you say you can't charge that. And most of the time, well, I wouldn't pay for that. Well, you're not your customer.
Right.
You're not the person paying it. And yes, typically 99% of the time that I see it is most of our clients have to charge more. They're not charging enough. And to your point, as far as I might start losing money, but if you were actually making more money, you can actually do less work. You don't
Mm.
have to do as much work. And one of the things we do, like we go through to figure out your budget with our calculator, we can almost predict what you're going to make at the end of the year. As long as everything goes as planned,
Yep.
we can tell you what you're going to make. And when you're going through that, you can start making adjustments and making tweaks to give those bonuses to your employees. And it's just a really cool system when you start kind of hammering all those numbers out and finding out what it really costs. It's crazy. We had one lady that said, well, same thing. I can't charge this. I'm going to start losing customers. Well, she came to us. She was already in the hole. She was literally
Yeah.
taking payroll out of her own bank account to make payments to her employees. And we started looking at her what she's charging per hour for her current customers, and we started looking at it and figuring out what she needed to be charging, and she's like way under. I'm like, well, you need to tell these customers you're going to raise their rates or we need to drop them.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, then I start losing employees and stuff. So we started, I was like, let's not do it all. Let's start 10% of the clients, call them today, tell them you're raising your rates to where you need to be. And now we're a few months in, and she did that. She had some people that left, but now she's actually making more money because
Mm.
she's charging enough and having doing less work.
Yep.
I guess going back to my point too with the overhead calculator, when we start going down, and it's basically laid out like a profit and loss statement or income statement. When you go through it, you get to the bottom and you can see like you're going to make money or you're not making money.
Yeah.
And I start telling them, okay, well, if you want to make more money, let's raise that revenue. And like, oh, I can't raise it. Well, all you're doing, you're not doing more work. You're just charging your clients more. And we start
Yep.
doing that, we can figure all that back end out. So it's kind of a cool system when you start going through it. You can predict everything what you're going to do at the beginning of the year. And then you have a great plan to go for the rest of the year as far as pricing.
Yeah. And I would say, like, when I first started our home service business, I was that guy. I was just pricing things because just to get the jobs, just to try to feed the family. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And we didn't raise our prices for years. And, you can build a million or 5 million or $10 million business and do all that work. And let's just say you have a super low margin. What if you can actually get your pricing right? And now you can go from, I don't know, doing 2 million to 1 million, but you're still making the same or more, less work, less employees, less headaches, less jobs, and you're making the same amount of profit. So
Yeah.
it's just a no brainer.
Yeah, and then we hear too many landscapers they either don't take a paycheck or they're taking very little paycheck.
Yeah.
Heck, I remember my dad and mom were doing it. My mom was only making like $20,000 being full time. I mean, this is a while back, but she was only making like $20,000, which is nothing. Like,
Yeah.
how are you surviving? Well, we can't afford it. Well, let's plan the business around that. So let's
Yeah.
figure out what you want to make, and then we can figure out what we need to charge our clients. And just kind of reverse engineering essentially is what we're doing to figure out what you need to charge your clients. And so you can make the payroll, make the payment, or make yourself a payroll person,
Yeah.
and get what you need to get paid.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. Yeah. I think it's honestly like smart to start with that. Before you go out and put your first door hanger in, figure out like, and I'm sure this stuff has to be tweaked as you go. Like if you,
Oh
especially
yeah.
if you're a new business, hey, I think this job's going to take me this long. And you realize like, oh, well, it actually takes me a lot longer than I thought it would, which is fine. Well, we can tweak things as we go, but you have to know why you price things from the get go, or else, because again, like the client you had that has, she's scared to call her customer list and raise prices. It's like, well, if we were doing it the right way from the start, we wouldn't be in this predicament. So
Yeah.
for anyone
Yeah.
new, this is a really good thing to listen to and to implement right away. And if you're not new, like raising prices a lot can be painful. But what we found is when we started raising prices, like we had way less pushback than I expected. And I think it's just because like people know what's going on. Like people know inflation and everything's expensive right now. Like a dozen of eggs is, $5, $6, $7, depending on
Yeah.
where you live. And it's like, it's okay. Gas is high. Like this is honestly, in my opinion, one of the easiest times to raise prices because people do
Yes.
expect it.
Absolutely. That's something I tell people right now. Like, do it now because a year from now, it might be different
Yep.
economy. So do it now, raise your prices while you can. And people are understanding. They know like everything's gone up. So, like, exactly what you said. Exactly what you said. The other thing I was going to throw out is the backside of estimating is job costing. So you have to be doing job costing. To me, job costing is like your report card for your business, and making sure you're charging enough. And that's the only way you're going to be able to go in and make adjustments in your future estimates or make improvements in your training because maybe your employees are doing something they're not familiar with. Okay, well, what can I do to speed the employees up? Is it doing some more training? There's a lot going into it. So job costing is essential, and that's something that we see many people just don't do. They don't think it's important, but you never know you're doing it wrong unless you do the job costing. Many people I know, especially landscapers, they wait till the end of the year when they go turn their taxes into their accountant, and then, oh, you didn't make any money. Well, at that point, it's too damn late. Like you
Yeah.
need to be doing this along the way. So if you do job costing after every single job, it makes it easy. Like I actually have it right here. We use these job folders so you can put
Yep.
all the information in for your customers, and we put all our cost on there so we can see at the end of the day we have a meeting. Here's what we made. Here's our gross profit margin. Here's what our equipment costs you, what our labor costs you. We do this for every single job.
Yeah.
Now, yes, it takes time, but again, if you don't spend the time doing it now, you'll never know that you need to adjust your times or what you're charging for your
Yep.
customers unless you're doing it.
That's really powerful. Yeah. Yeah. So basically, for people that don't know what job costing is, can you just give them like a quick definition?
Sure. So, once you do your job, and it doesn't matter what type of work, whether you're
Yep.
painting, electrical, plumbing, landscaping, whatever it is, what you're essentially doing is looking at all the true cost for that job, looking at how much time your employees are out there, what your employees are costing you, what the equipment's costing you, what your materials are costing you, and comparing that to what you actually bid the job for, what you'd create that estimate for that customer. And if you're coming up short, where did it come short? Did you not charge enough, or
Hmm.
was there even a change order? Maybe you could have added some more to that job because they changed the job, and you can create a change order to recover that. And that's where you kind of need to do it right away.
Yep.
But it's really just comparing your actuals versus your estimated and seeing where you like did everything wrong or right. And
Yep.
if you did it right, well, can you bump it up a little bit more? If you did it wrong, what can I do to change that? Or do I need more training? Do I need to get some other equipment, or should I do something different? It's all those things. But if you don't do it, you don't ever doing it wrong until it's too late.
There's a freedom attached to that, man. Like I can feel it, like as you're talking, like to be able to go through like your job cost folder, and at the end of the job, be like, okay, we broke everything down. Cause like, it's not hard to break things down when you do it on a singular level like that. And you're like,
No.
okay, we made X amount. Like, I'm happy with that. And you actually know that you were profitable in that job rather than just cashing the check and moving on to the next one, and everything gets
Yeah.
mixed together. And then the end of the year, it's like, why are we in the negative?
Yeah. And we see it all the time as far as they'll realize that maybe they'll do just a quick job cost, and there's different programs out there that kind of help speed it along, but they'll just kind of look at it in general and be like, oh, we lost money, but they don't make any adjustments to it. They'll
Yeah.
be like, I'll just make it up the next job. And it's just always that cycle. I'll just make it up the next job. I'll charge more. I'll make it up. But what if there's issues on the next job? Whatever.
Yep.
You have no plan. So if you have the actual numbers in front of you, kind of lay it out and see it, then you can make those adjustments. Looking back at my dad, he needed to see the numbers. He was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, we're fine, we're fine." Until I laid the numbers out exactly right in front of him and sat down in front of him, and he got to see. He's like, "Oh yeah, you're right. This is not where we need to be. We need to be
Yep.
doing something different and creating a plan off of that." And it's something that any service industry needs to do. You need to sit down and understand your numbers.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just in the cycle of just getting more work and trying to make up the next job. Or I'm going to get that next great employee, and that'll make a difference. None of
Yep.
that matters if you're not charging.
Yeah, man, that's so good. And I know this is kind of like, it's kind of the same with me. Like, if anyone knows me for anything, it's like learning how to generate leads and sales and marketing in their business. And that's not like the sexiest thing to do. And neither is this. Like, it's not an easy sell, quote unquote. But I'll tell you what, like, this is hands down probably one of the most important things you can do inside of your business right now that will allow you to make more money. So
Absolutely.
yeah, so I think that's super valuable. So tell us, or tell the listeners, I guess, where can they find you? Tell us a little bit about the podcast, all of that.
Sure. So you can find us at milliondollarlandscaper.com. Inside there, we talk about our different programs. One of them is the estimating side of things. So we can help you figure out what you need to charge your customers. And it doesn't matter what type of service you provide, we can help you figure out. The cool thing with our estimating systems is we can tailor it towards your business. So we can, if you use a certain product, a certain brand, we can put that all in there, and you can kind of go down the line. Once we get all your numbers down, you can go down the line and put together an estimate. We had a person that did a $50,000 landscape lighting job estimate in 20 minutes, put it together. And the cool thing when you do it that fast, and if you're out there with a customer, you can go turn around and sell that job so much better because you got
Yeah.
them pumped up, you got them excited. And hey, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, here's your quote. I sent it to you in the email or print it off, whatever you do. And you
Yep.
give it to them right then and there. It makes it easier. So we have that inside our estimating program. We also have our inner circle where we have all our systems inside there. So that's a great program too. Like you mentioned, we also have our Million Dollar Landscape podcast where we talk to great people like yourself and just share the stuff that things that went wrong in our business, things that went right in our business. We just kind of share our information in there. So if you really sat down and went through everything in there, you
Yep.
can learn so much. Just I'm sure like yours, you sit down and listen to all these podcasts. There's so much great information in there. You just spend the time listening to it.
Cool. 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 Yeah, man, that's awesome. Well, I super appreciate you. I would say this is one of the more probably tactical like podcasts when like as far as me having a guest on, which I just absolutely geek out on. I love it. And so
Yeah.
I definitely appreciate it. If you guys have any questions, I'll put his information in the show notes as well. You know, feel free to reach out to Scott. I'm sure he'd love to hear from you. And thanks for being on, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Have a great one.
All right. Take care.